Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man plays a game that he regrets he ever downloaded. So, by any means necessary, don't play Hatchet Man Cove.
At first, I wrote this entire post as a way to get people to uninstall and remove the game Hatchet Man Cove from their Steam accounts, but I soon realized pretty much no one has ever played it. But if you by any chance happen to own a copy, please, I urge you, remove it. Uninstall and forget it. Don't look back. Don't touch it ever again. I'll tell you why. A friend of mine bought a 3-pack of Hatchet Man Cove back in 2009. It was a multiplayer game where 3 people are paired up against a single strong player on the opposite team. Kind of like an early Dead by Daylight game. This game might very well be a spiritual predecessor. The similarities between those games are pretty eerie. I'm sure at least one person on the Dead by Daylight team has a Steam copy of Hatchet Man Cove, and that kind of worries me. See, Hatchet Man Cove was this game where you played in cycles, kind of like a red light, green light game. 3 people play as survivors from a ship that crashed into the cove, and a 4th player gets to play as the killer. The killer wasn't necessarily some slasher with an axe. It could be a vengeful angel, a grim reaper, or several other kinds of killer. At least that was the original plan. So the game would alter between having bright lights all over the map going on and off. While they were on, the killer would notice any kind of movement with a ping. When the lights were off, survivors could move any way they want as long as they didn't draw too much attention. They could set up traps to delay the killer or sabotage the lights to get more time. The killer, on the other hand, was to grab the survivors and drown them in a well at the center of the map. Once a survivor was grabbed, the other survivors are given a choice to either try and intercept the killer using traps or use the time to gain an advantage. The problem was that Hatchet Man Cove didn't sell very well. The developers had some legal trouble with their publisher, who were pissed about the developers backing out of an exclusive deal with OnLive. Check it, it's on Wikipedia. There was no promotion on Steam or anywhere else, as the publishers didn't want it released on another platform. They didn't want it released at all for another 6 months until the game had the proper infrastructure. The devs screwed up and published it on Steam anyway, and the whole thing was a mess. Still, during the months that it was active, there was a fairly regular player base. My friends and I played it pretty much every day for about a month. I mained Sturgis as a survivor, the Norwegian fisherman who could lure the killer using his fishing rod. As a killer, there were only 2 options at the time, the Hatchetman and the Blameless. I preferred to play the Hatchetman. He was straightforward. You got a hatchet, could destroy shelters, and had a certain resistance to traps. The Blameless, she was just weird. They never managed to balance her right. The Blameless was an old woman. She was slow, but she floated around the map and avoided all ground-based traps. She always had this warm smile, and her passive ability was just the weirdest. If she was far away, she would look like a random ally on your team. Only when she got closer would she reveal that sinister, smiling face. Hatchet Man was just a murderer, but the Blameless was downright creepy. But the game didn't get any updates because of the legal battle. No updates, no new survivors, no killers, nothing. Instead, the game went silent. We stopped playing, and a few months later, the game was unceremoniously unlisted and removed from the Steam store, without as much as an apology. I uninstalled Hatchet Man Cove and didn't think about it for years. Just one of those games that rest in the back catalog. I forgot I even had it. But this is where things get weird. Last December, I was gifted the new Harvest Moon game as a Christmas present, and some primal part of my reptile brain clicked back in on Hatchet Man Cove. The friends I used to play with had moved on with their lives, but the game still had a Steam community page. I checked the store page, and it was empty. The game couldn't be found on Google either. The game was completely hidden. If you don't actually have it in your library, you won't find it without a direct link. That in itself is kind of weird. Most abandoned games can still be Googled. But Hatchet Man Cove still had a very, very active community. There were plenty of discussions on the forums, but they didn't make any sense. Their speech was almost garbled. I'm sure whatever they discussed made sense to them, but to an outsider, it seemed like nonsense. A few examples. Topic. How much GW to finish no min? I want to finish no min, I don't know yet. Just don't GW then. Get your shit together. You'll never go min if you don't GW, just commit. The discussion forum is just a mess. The example above was the most legible thing I could find, and I still have no idea what it says. So I started checking out the community content like videos and screenshots. The way the community played the game was completely different from when I played. Pretty much no one played Hatchetman anymore. The killer seemed limited to the blameless. Not a single screenshot of the Hatchetman, just the blameless. But the weirdest thing was how players interacted with the killer. Instead of hiding, they come running up to her. They run up to her with their microphones on, screaming at her. Screaming, begging, pleading for her to kill them. Not with funny voices or anything, no. There were people crying in chat. Videos marked with GW, and various dates littered the community page, each with people crying and screaming and begging to die. The volume maxed out immediately, and most of the time, all voices were nothing but a crackling mess that could easily blow out your speakers. I couldn't stop watching. I'd never seen anything like it, not even back in the days when I was still playing. That wasn't the way you played the game. No one was hiding or looking for objectives. I'd see players using my old main Sturgis and just rush the blameless as soon as the match started. Seeing the 3D model of the old bearded man running up to the blameless, pleading to die, that was uncomfortable. I made the mistake of posting my own question on the discussion forum. I was just too curious. You have to remember, at this point, this was still just a weird blip in my Steam library. I made my own topic and just asked, what the hell happened to the game? I got no responses in a week. Nothing. After that, things have gotten weird. Real weird. It started with CSGO. One night, a teammate came on and just started screaming. No big deal at first, just another troll, but he was screaming at me, specifically. Screaming at me, begging me to shoot him. There was crime. He was desperate, asking me to please team kill him. He offered to send me money, trade rare skins, whatever I wanted. He got kicked before I even knew what to say. 2 games later, the same guy joins my team with a different username and clan tag. He keeps screaming, crying, and begging. My teammates laughed, but I was getting uncomfortable. I stopped playing. Hearing a grown man barely being able to breathe between sobs is just too much. That wasn't a prank, that was desperation. But it didn't stop there. From that point on, in several games, people started joining and begging me to kill them. It could be by text, in Steam, chat, by voice, whatever they could. Once in Fall Guys, there were 2 people with the usernames Kill Me and Kill Me Too. How? You can't even pick your own username in Fall Guys. They just stood there, waiting for me to push them over the edge. These colorful little blob people just made my stomach crawl, because I knew that whoever controlled them were sitting there, screaming in a complete panic behind the screen. It just kept going. In Red Dead Redemption 2, I used to have the setting to hear and be heard by everyone enabled, but I had to stop. Naked users came running at me while I was camping out at Strawberry, and I turned off all audio as soon as I saw them. I was shaking as I realized the mute setting didn't work, and I force-closed my game. I swear, for a few seconds after the executable had closed, I could still hear them. I threw my headphones across the room and walked away from the computer, just holding my head and quivering. I didn't know what to do. I could barely be at my computer. I went back to the Hatchetman Cove Steam forums and just started reporting people. I also reported all videos to YouTube, and I just flagged everything. I know I abused the report system, but things were getting out of hand. I was being harassed. So they took it down. Not just the forums or the videos, but everything. The entire Steam page. Gone, including the community page. I could still see the name Hatchetman Cove in my library at that point, but nothing showed up when I clicked it. YouTube and Steam probably didn't care much and didn't bother to do a review of my reports. It was easier to just pull the plug. And for a while that did the trick. I actually got back on CSGO. Then it got worse than ever. Random people started joining our Discord server, just screaming into our ears. No matter how many times we banned them or muted them, they just kept coming back. My friends noticed that as long as I was offline, their voices stayed away. so my server figured I was playing a prank or something. At first they thought it was kind of funny, but the more it happened, the more they were getting frustrated. Some were getting scared and sent me private messages asking me to please, as friends, stop. Today I'm permabanned. I can't even log back onto Discord without getting messages from random accounts begging me to come online and kill them. It has gotten to the point where I've uninstalled pretty much everything. I don't even have Skype. I don't play games anymore, and I don't think I'll be browsing Reddit much longer either, since I've started getting messages here too. Not just here, but on my phone as well. Texts in the middle of the night, random calls from unknown numbers. Last week I found traces of handprints on my kitchen window. Not just one or two, but dozens. A neighbor told me there'd been someone shouting outside my door when I was out buying groceries the other day. I'm considering calling the police, but I don't know what to say. I don't even know if I'm in danger. I can't get the bland face of the blameless out of my head. I dream of her asking me without moving her crinkled old mouth if I want it all to stop, and I say yes. I go to her, dressed as old Sturgis, standing alongside the others with my fishing rod. First, I ask her to end it all, but the others speak louder and she can't hear me. Then I ask again, trying to speak over the others. Soon I find myself screaming. We all scream, louder and louder, begging, pleading, crying for her attention. We all want it to stop, and she refuses to oblige. Instead, she just smiles, holding some sort of beautiful secret behind her pixelated dead eyes. I don't know what it is, but I want it. I'm starting to understand, but at the same time, I'm disgusted. Please, stay away from Hatchet Man Cove.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man getting home late from work discovers a blank picture frame in his apartment. So, even though life is picture perfect, I still don't know how I got all the empty frames.
I was having a good day at work. Not too much to do, just enough to make the time pass and keep me busy. I gave a work friend a ride home and had a long talk. Turns out we're both the youngest siblings in our families, which gave us a surprising amount of common ground. I got myself a chicken salad and drove home. I walked up the stairs to my apartment, and I opened the front door, and right there on the wall with all the smiling pictures of my friends and family was a blank picture frame. Empty. What the hell? While it didn't ruin my night, it made me start asking questions. I wouldn't just hang up a blank picture, and I wouldn't put it in the middle of the hallway. I have this large hallway mirror with pictures hung up on the side, and it is kind of a centerpiece. Still, I couldn't recall what would have been in that frame, and there was no photo that had slipped out. I wasn't planning on framing anything either, or if I did, I wouldn't hang the frame up before I'd put in the photo. I'd be lying if I said that it really bothered me. It was an oddity at most. For a second, I caught myself in the mirror looking anxious. Why was I letting this get to me? The weekend was just around the corner. I just gave myself a smile and took the frame down. The next day, I came home to another empty frame. Now, this was strange. It wasn't empty earlier that day, or I would have taken it down along with the other one. There would be no reason for me to only take down one frame. So what had happened between now and then that caused this frame to turn blank? And why couldn't I remember what was in that frame when I looked at it just the day before? This time, I caught myself looking bothered. The hallway mirror doesn't lie. It was time to figure this out, weekend be damned. I made two conclusions. The first was that if the frame had been emptied the day before, I would have taken it down. Hence, it must have turned empty between when I left from work and when I came home, about 9 hours in total. The second conclusion was that the photos that were framed were completely missing. They hadn't just dropped out. The backing board was intact, and the little metal points holding it back were tight. Either someone took the photo out, or it just ceased to exist. That wasn't a comfortable conclusion. My mirror image seemed to agree. I checked the locks, the balcony, the windows, all of it. I lived on the second floor, but with enough determination, a thief could get in anywhere. Sure, there would be no reason for a thief to get in and just steal a single picture, leaving the frame, but there were crazies all over. Don't get me started on the next town over, where an entire neighborhood wears creepy masks. Everything was intact. No one would get in or out without breaking something, and nothing had been broken. I went to check my keys to see if anyone had stolen the spare, but it was still there. What surprised me, though, was the key to a bike lock. I didn't have a bike, did I? There was a bike rack out front, and I started trying the key. I got a lot of sneers from the neighbors, but I tried not to let it bother me. Finally, I found the bike the key belonged to. A sporty bike, a woman's model. The seating was much lower than I'd use, and seeing as how I am a man, I probably would have gotten another kind of model. Probably. Loved the colors, though. It gave me an uncomfortable thought. Maybe I wasn't just forgetting the pictures. Maybe I was forgetting whatever or whoever was inside them as well. Maybe I was forgetting people. As a precaution, I hurried back up to my apartment. I wrote down a description for each remaining picture. I also recorded them with my phone. I committed them each to memory to the best of my ability. The next day, as I was brushing my teeth, I noticed another empty picture frame. I nearly swallowed my toothpaste. My mouth felt dry. I couldn't remember what had been framed. I could feel myself cold sweating as my heart started to race. This was impossible. I'd been here the entire time. I picked up my phone to check the video I'd recorded, but I was told the file had been corrupted and couldn't be played. I caught a glimpse of my dilated pupils in the hallway mirror as I hurried into the kitchen. The note with all my descriptions had been torn to pieces. With shaking hands, I gathered every piece and tried to puzzle them back together. They were no bigger than the nail on my pinky finger. I must have been at it for hours. I'd gotten about halfway when I realized there were several missing pieces. They were probably the description for the photo in the now empty frame. I concluded. I was not just forgetting things. They were actively being removed. It was a disturbing thought. How do you make someone forget something or someone? That last thought resonated with me. Someone. I didn't feel like I was missing anyone, but then again, how would I know? If I'd forgotten about someone important in my life and all traces of them were gone, how would I know? This gave me an idea. In some places, a lack of things can be just as telling as having something. I went through my entire apartment, step by step, and noticed a few inconsistencies. There was an empty drawer in my bedroom. I wouldn't just let one drawer overflow and another remain empty. I would have spread things out. Someone had probably been using this drawer until recently. There were several empty folders on my computer. I may not be the brightest PC user, but I don't create empty folders for no reason, especially not in the image and movie default folders. There were entire shelves that were suspiciously empty in both my fridge and freezer. Again, why wouldn't I just spread things out? It felt like I was watching a mind-twisting game of Jenga, only the pieces that were picked out were parts of my life. As I took a shower to clear my head, I noticed two more things. One, there was a pale patch of skin on my right shoulder, with strange contours. There had probably been a tattoo there. Two, there was a mark on my left ring finger. So, until just recently, I'd worn an engagement ring. I sent a few messages to friends and family and checked my social media. There was no indications of any kind that I had been engaged. I got a few responses from confused friends. They had no idea what I was talking about, and they started asking if I was okay. I wasn't the problem here. The problem was that something was eating up my life, step by step, and I had no way to fight it. I stumbled back into the kitchen, poured myself a whiskey, and started making a list. A list of things someone like me would think was important enough to put in a picture on my wall. Parents, uncles, cousins, siblings, grandparents, pets, all of it. Then, I tried to match what I could remember to those categories. I remembered almost everything. There were a few blank spots. For example, I had no brothers or sisters, and I'd been single for a very long time. That didn't make any sense, though. Just a few days prior, I'd been talking to a work colleague about being the youngest sibling. Not just younger, like you are if you have a single older sibling, but youngest. That's what you are if you have more siblings than one. Plural. I couldn't remember having any brothers or sisters. I laid it all out. I had most probably completely forgotten about 2 siblings and a fiancé. I'll be the first to admit I didn't handle it very well. I called my mother after my 4th drink of whiskey, and I wasn't making much sense. She was worried. Of course, I had no brothers or sisters. Never had, and sadly, never would. Check the photo albums, I screamed. Check every album you've got, and you'll see. You'll see the empty pages. I sat down flat in the hallway with my fifth drink, having thrown my cell phone across the room. I stared at myself in the hallway mirror. I almost looked happy, despite feeling awful. That's what a good drink can do to you. It is like putting on a mask. I frowned as deep as I could, but it just looked like I was making a funny face. To be fair, the hallway mirror wasn't that great. It was slightly stretched, making you look a little thinner and taller than you really are. Kind of like a funhouse mirror, only to a lesser effect. I tried again to commit every photo to memory. My parents, my uncle, my grandparents, my cousin, standing in a field of those weird blue sunflowers. I counted them all, then counted them again. And on my sixth drink, I fell asleep on the floor, curled up in a fetal position. I was drifting in and out of sleep. Despite everything, I was happy no more pictures had disappeared. One by one, they'd gone away like petals picked from a flower. Then it stopped. There'd been no more. Maybe it was over, and whatever was removing them had gotten what it came for. Of course, there was another option. Maybe it was just waiting for me to fall asleep. That thought jolted me awake. I'd probably gotten a solid 3 hours of sleep, and it was the middle of the night. There was rustling in the kitchen. Not loud, but loud enough for me to hear it. It sounded like someone going through my cutlery. There was nothing special in there for someone to steal. Well, except for an old butter knife my cousin gave to me back when she was into whittling that one summer. The thought froze me. I checked the picture frames. All the photos were still there. There might still be time. I had a handgun in a secure locker in my bedroom, on a small shelf above my winter jackets. The key was right there in the hallway, on a separate keychain. I got the key, listening for movement in the kitchen. I could hear the rustling stop and the kitchen drawer being set back in place. If whoever was in there decided to check the bedroom, I'd be screwed. I held my breath and listened. I heard footsteps move into the bathroom. Of course, there was a cologne I'd gotten as a birthday gift last year. That was also from my cousin. But I could still remember her, so it wasn't too late. I opened the locker, loaded a clip, and turned the safety off. I stepped into the hallway, held the gun up high, and looked into the bathroom. I could hear someone looking for something just around the corner, next to the bathtub. But all I could see was the edge of a pair of jeans and a black t-shirt, and I had to act. "Stop!" I yelled. "Step out! Slowly!" The rustling stopped. "Hello!" The voice was dark and muddled, as if spoken underwater. It was distant, but near, and it echoed. It made the air tremble so hard that it made my stomach shiver. I almost threw up. "Step out with your hands." He did. I did. It was me. The hallway mirror was empty. There were a few differences. The person I was looking at was slightly taller and thinner. Stretched, like the image in the mirror, it was still mirroring my expression, but not the movements of my body. I looked terrified. "Hello," he repeated, sending another ripple through my guts. "Hands on your head," I said. "Stay back. I'm calling the police." "Hello." He didn't comply. I double-checked the safety, and it was off. A pinch of the trigger would be all it took. Instead of listening to me, the person stepped forward. I pulled the trigger. I shouldn't have done that. The bullet made a hole in his left shoulder. It went clean through. A few drops of blood escaped him, but evaporated against the floor in puffs of black smoke. The person had been keeping up an act, and now it felt threatened. In an instant, it turned into something else. The face twisted and turned. The jaw unhinged, and the tongue stuck straight up in the air like the rattle of a snake. Limbs grew longer and turned soft. A third arm grew from the stomach, tearing away the black t-shirt. Hands grew longer, fingers ending in bird-like talons. There was no way I would stand my ground against this walking nightmare. My instincts were battling each other. One side asking me to shut down and stay dead, the other telling me to run. There was no fighting to be done, only ways to flee. I took off running. It was nothing but luck that I remembered my trigger discipline. I started running down the flight of stairs. A neighbor was yelling, calling the police. Someone opened a door. I can't remember what happened to them or who they were. A scream I can't remember, silenced. Something the size of a football, being torn free from a torso. I got out into the cool night air. I was barefoot. For a second, I almost convinced myself it wasn't really happening. Standing out there in the real world, it just couldn't be happening. This doesn't happen in the real world. Then my nightmare came bursting through the door. It had grown. It extended its stomach to a bubble, like the abdomen of a spider. It had 3 arms and 4 legs, and there were more things growing. The head could barely be recognized. It had folded itself backwards, using an elongated tongue like an antenna sniffing the air. For all the things I've been forced to forget, this thing I can't help but remember. I couldn't forget it if I tried. Closing my eyes to this day, I can describe everything down to the texture of its skin. I kept running. The pitter-patter of skin flung against asphalt came closer. It was right behind me. I knew that if it caught me, I'd never have existed in the first place. Not even my mother would remember me. Everything I was, everything I'd done, gone in an instant. Hello? The rumble in my stomach came back, and I lost my balance. I fell forward, badly scraping my shoulder. No, was the only word I could muster. No! I was breathing too fast, and my head was barely getting any oxygen. I was panicking. I flipped around, laid on my back, and held up my handgun. It was almost on me. Teeth, naked skin, talons, and limbs. It was warm. I didn't want to disappear, not like this. That's when I noticed something in the distance. There was something sparkling just outside my balcony. There was a thin ripple in the air, like an umbilical cord. It was like looking at a black hole. There was nothing there to see but the lack of space. This ripple stretched from the nape of the creature up to a rectangular sparkle, hanging free in the air. The hallway mirror. It was stuck to it. Despite teeth, skin, and claw moving in to rip me apart, I aimed for the hallway mirror. It looked so odd, floating in midair, so far above ground. An anchor. Maybe it was adrenaline, or maybe I was lucky. But the shot connected. Shards spilled out of the frame, and the creature turned around. Parts of it were falling off, evaporating into black smoke. It hurried back towards the mirror. I followed it. It fell to its knees, arms flailing. It was trying to gather the shards, to desperately puzzle it all together. Hello, it said again. This time the sound was high-pitched, almost shrieking. The creature had shrunk significantly, and as I got closer, I unloaded the entire clip into the rest of the mirror. Shards shattered against the sidewalk, and the creature was oozing with black smoke. A single eyeball tumbled out of its skull and fell into the largest of the shards. Moments later, the entire creature evaporated. I kept that shard. I can sometimes see something moving in it, but it is too small to harm anyone. If you listen closely to it, you can hear a tiny hello. The police came, but none of my neighbors could remember why someone would have called. They hadn't seen or heard anything. It was odd, though. One of the apartments had been left wide open. It was still furnished, but no one can remember anyone ever living there. I'm guessing we forgot about the tenant, but that the creature didn't get the time to clean up the belongings. Looking back at this, I'm certain I had a brother. I think he lived in the outskirts of the city, and that he disappeared as he was out camping with his friends. I also think I had a sister. I'm certain she was the one who gave me the mirror to begin with. She was smart, studied in Europe for several years. She was blinded in an accident a few years ago. I haven't figured out when or how she disappeared. My fiancée was the last to disappear. Despite my best efforts, I haven't been able to figure out anything about her. She is a complete mystery to me. Trying to mourn her knots my stomach. I'm trying to imagine what we would have done together, what places we'd seen, or how long we'd been together, but I just can't. If I only had something to remember her by, something real, I could have made peace with it. There's just no closure. It feels odd to mourn something I can't know I had, but I do. It hurts. I sometimes wake up crying, holding a pillow. My body remembers something I don't. The shower feels empty in the morning. I feel miserable shopping alone, all these little ordinary things that I should be used to feel slightly awe. I guess there are things you just can't forget. I'm posting here to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. If you have blank picture frames, take it seriously. check your mirrors, make lists, try to remember. Hell, smash every mirror you have. And if anyone has any idea what the hell I should do with this shard, feel free to share. I don't mind having it, but there must be someone who can use it for something. I can't just call a scientist about it. Good luck out there.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man's aunt passes away and leave him items that's wanted by more than just collectors. So, what item is passed down in your family? Because mine's is the Soundless Lady.
My Aunt Rachel practically raised me. After a lengthy battle with a terminal illness, she passed last year, leaving what little she had left after the hospital bills were paid. I was to take care of her cockatiel parrot, Tugboat, and her collection of 50s cartoon-themed collective plates. Basically, the only two items that couldn't be easily sold at an auction. If you saw the plates, you'd see why. Downright creepy things. One in particular, a plate portraying a young cartoon girl feeding apples to a giant frog. It's like the whole thing was made by two different people. The girl looked positively Disney, while the frog was more, uncomfortably realistic. It was such an odd item that there had to be a collector looking for it somewhere. I was sure of it. Yet for weeks, I couldn't find anyone even remotely interested. I posted pictures of the plate on pretty much every social media account I had, along with a few auction sites. But there were no takers. There were no markings or stamps indicating year or brand, unlike the other plates. And I was starting to think it was custom made. I couldn't stand looking at it. So I put it in a box in the garage. The others went up on my kitchen wall. My aunt would have wanted it that way. I live in a house not too far from the lake, on the outskirts of a small Minnesota town. There are a few houses in the nearby area, but I couldn't even hit the closest neighbor's yard with a rock if I tried. There's only a single streetlight that works outside, and that thing is flimsier than our summer weather. I rarely have any visitors, as this place can be a bit too out of the way even for my friends to come by. I inherited this place from my mom, who passed away when I was younger. I'm one of the lucky house owners of my generation, but at what cost? My aunt's bird, Tugboat, fit right in. It was easy for me to fix him a big cage in one of the back rooms. When you're living on your own in a place like this, you got more space than you know what to do with. My aunt's funeral was simple. She'd insisted she paid for it herself, so it had to be as basic and cheap as could be. She hated the thought of ever being a burden, and she practically begged me to take care of Tugboat. You don't say no to that. You just don't. Besides, that bird was damn near the only thing that kept me sane through the COVID pandemic. Having lived in an empty house, you learn to identify most sounds around the property. The hum of the fuse box, the buzzing kitchen lights, the noise from the fridge against the backdrop of a TV that's been on way too long without anyone watching. This was the only reason I ever really took notice, that one night when this all started. I was turning on my electric toothbrush one night, only to notice it was completely silent. The motor was running, I felt the vibrations, and I saw it spin, but there was no sound. Not a peep. Yet I could still hear the TV in the other room just fine. Over the next few days, there were several of these odd instances. Once, the egg timer went off but didn't make a sound, causing me to overboil my breakfast. I thought the ventilation was broken once, but it turned out to have just gone quiet. Hell, at one point I dropped one of my aunt's collective plates. It shattered against the ceramic tiles, yet didn't make any noise. I was starting to think I was going deaf, but the two doctors I spoke to confirmed my hearing was just fine. Still, the mental image of seeing that falling plate and expecting a loud crash, only for it to remain silent, there was something eerie to it. A friend of mine, Patrick, works for the sheriff's department. We usually had lunch once a week to catch up, but that tradition teetered off during the pandemic. This time, I met him at the supermarket, but barely even noticed him. I had been having trouble sleeping and getting to work on time, as my alarm clock sometimes stayed silent for no apparent reason. My boss wasn't too happy, so I had to start using a vibration alarm. Patrick elbow bumped me by the fruit aisle, snapping me out of my thoughts. "Hey there," he said, grabbing a handful of oranges. "You doing okay?" "Yeah, sorry, I didn't see you there." "These are crazy times," he said. "I heard about Rachel. I'm sorry I couldn't make the funeral." "That's okay," I nodded. "She never was much for men in uniform." Patrick laughed. We went our separate ways and finished our shopping, only to meet in the parking lot outside. We'd managed to park next to each other without even realizing it. He leaned against the hood of his car. "Hey, have you seen any strangers around? After this year, you all seem like strangers." "You know what I mean," he chuckled. "Strangers, passers-by." "No, sorry, I don't get out much. Some of your neighbors have had problems. Be careful." "Problems?" He looked at me like a deer in headlights. "You don't know?" Apparently, there'd been reports of a thief. First, they thought it was raccoons, as someone had gone through the trash cans. But raccoons don't try to pick locks. They also don't leave food behind, or human-sized handprints on the windows. Some people had reported seeing a woman with tangled hair roam about, but the police hadn't managed to find her. This is what made me start looking more closely at my own property. I had noticed the garbage can lid gone missing, but I hadn't given it much thought. Also, I could have sworn there were handprints on my car one dewy morning. I tried to tell myself that it was all paranoia, but after what Patrick said, it seemed that everything was a clue, or a warning. In my mind, the strange woman was lurking behind every corner. I tried to put it out of my mind. One night, as I heard Tugboat sing his interpretation of Earth, Wind and Fire's September, I took an extra long shower. As I was scrubbing my hair clean, my head went quiet. I could feel the water touching my skin, but it made no sound. Through the door, I could still hear the bird sing his heart out. You'd be surprised how cold, warm water can feel when you've got ice in your veins. I rinsed off most of the shampoo and stepped out. There's a small frosted glass window in my bathroom. The silhouette of a pale face was pressed against it. I screamed, but no sound came out. Tugboat kept singing in the other room, unaware. I grabbed my robe and ran into the kitchen to call Patrick, but I couldn't hear anyone pick up on the other end of the line. I couldn't hear my own words when I spoke. And there, just outside the kitchen window, was the silhouette of an intruder trying to find their way in. A pair of unevenly sized eyes stared at me, slightly too far apart. As our eyes met, she bolted, probably heading for the back door. I picked up my keychain. Tugboat stopped singing from the other room, as he sensed something was wrong. As my hearing returned, I could hear the comforting sound of sharp metal from my kitchen knife as I pulled it from a drawer. My pulse was running away from me. It is one thing to think of a home invasion, but to live it violates every thought of privacy and safety you have. It was turning real fast. There was a large sliding glass door leading out to the backyard, and I figured if there ever came an intruder, it'd be through there. The same room where Tugboat chirped away, but now he'd gone quiet. I ran in there, still fresh out of the shower, my knife held in a cramped, forced grip. I almost convinced myself that I was ready to use it. There she was, just outside the door, pale, with unkempt hair, eyes of different sizes, slightly too far apart, dressed in what looked like a hospital gown. She was malnourished and frail, but something told me she had the strength of a madwoman. Her eyes darted back and forth, searching for something. As they landed on me, she opened her wide mouth to scream. Not a sound came out. As her mouth grew to an unnatural size, I could feel vibrations in the air, like standing next to a concert loudspeaker. The sliding glass door shattered, the shards fanning out towards me. The knife in my hand started shaking, but I managed to hold it. She stepped inside, her bare feet smearing ribbons of blood on the hardwood floor. She was coming for me, a constant vibration from an unnatural scream, tearing through my body. I had to try to call for help, and sprinted back into the kitchen. The light bulbs burst overhead, turning the room black. Still, not a single noise. A stray light from the streets outside made its way through the kitchen window, making the room drip with long, pale shadows. My aunt's collective plates rattled on the wall. Glasses along the kitchen sink were cracking and breaking. Empty bottles spilled onto the floor. Cabinet doors shaking back and forth, opening seemingly at random. An old recipe book fell from a countertop, the pages flicking back and forth. I pressed myself against the kitchen window, fumbling to get it open. She'd cornered me. Her mouth was wide open in that impossible scream, her body vibrating with machine-like intensity. The tangled hair twisting and stretching, as if thrown about in a storm of its own. Her uneven eyes searched for me, twitching like insects. And still, she didn't make a single sound. There were no humming fans, no buzzing electricity, only a soft breeze outside the window. I couldn't even hear my heartbeat. I managed to stumble out of the kitchen window, stepping onto the sharp gravel path. I still held onto my knife like a comfort blanket. I didn't even bother to see if she followed me, I just ran. There was no time to get in the car. I ran into the woods, following a trail that would lead me to my neighbor. Soon, the rhythmic beat of my feet went quiet, my breath too. I tried to scream for help, but the sound was swallowed. She was right behind me. Long nails reached for me, fingertips touching the edge of my robe. And all around me, nothing but tranquil nature, unbothered by my terror. I was knocked to the ground, scraping my legs against the undergrowth. I slashed with my knife, trying to fight her, as a dainty hand picked up my keys from the side pocket of my robe. I rolled away, only to see the mess of tangled hair walk away. Her uneven eyes gave me a last look as she turned her back to me. She looked right through me without a care in the world. I got to my neighbor. My dirty feet muddied their floor, and by the time the police came, it felt like a waking nightmare. I made my statement, showered for the second time that night, and slept at a nearby motel as the police cleared my house. The next day, I assessed the damage. The house had been searched thoroughly, but nothing was stolen. Not too much was broken either. Seems she was looking for something specific, not trying to steal any valuables. The police were just as dumbfounded as I was, and I didn't report anything stolen. My insurance company would need an explanation. It was hard to explain why it looked like the house had been hit by a tornado from the inside without sounding insane. All the collective plates laid shattered on the floor. Poor Tugboat was so traumatized, he's since stopped singing. Going through the damages was heartbreaking, but it made me take notice of something peculiar. The garage had been searched as well. It was pretty much fine though, at least compared to the house. Among my boxes, I noticed a single item missing. The creepy plate I'd put aside for my aunt. The only one I didn't want in the house. The one with the young cartoon girl feeding the giant frog. It was gone. I guess I found the single collector who wanted it.